Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, and with me, as always, is Jessica Mederson. Together, we form the Legal Geeks, much like the Wonder Twins, and today we are here to talk about a Scottish sport that brings pride to people all over the world. I speak, of course, of curling. Jessica, what is curling for those who don't know that they haven't known the magic of curling?
Which is what, probably like 95% of the world's population, maybe 90% of the American population. Pretty much if you're not in Michigan, Wisconsin, or northern Minnesota, I couldn't find, doing a quick search, I need to find stats on like who else curls. Maybe probably New England. I'm sure parts of New England, northern New England must curl. But yes, curling is a sport invented by the Scots apparently back in medieval times, I guess during the winter when they couldn't golf. They're like, what else are we going to do? And they had plenty of ice like we do in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So they said, let's figure out a game we can play on the ice. And so what curling is now, first of all, of course, I do love it, like I'm from northern Minnesota, and curling is big in northern Minnesota, but it is great. Everyone complains about the cold, and it's so cold outside. Well, curling is a way they figured out to make it cold inside, too. They're like, let's bring the ice indoors. We don't have enough outside. Let's bring the ice indoors. Instead of a bowling alley, they pretty much set up curling lanes. It's, kind of a similar feel. You get these, you can go into a curling club, and you'll have like 6 long curling lanes, and what it is on each side of the lane, there's a target, and it's actually kind of like the bullseye, like with darts. And there are 4 people on a team, and they each get to take a turn taking these big, heavy, very smooth, polished rocks or stones, they're sometimes called, that have a handle on the top, and you gently push it down the ice. And of course, because it's ice, this rock slides on it quite well. And it goes all the way down the alley, and the goal is to try and get it in the middle of the target on the other end of the alley or the lane. Now, what's so great about this is that this is a team participation kind of sport. So in addition to the person who pushes the stone, there are 2 sweepers. There are other people who take their turn pushing stones, but when it's not their turn, they stand in the middle and they push little brooms furiously back and forth in front of the stone, or again the rock, in front of the rock. The theory being that they heat up the ice slightly, thereby melting the ice a little bit and making the rock slide further than it would otherwise. Because of course there's also the judgment call. Is the rock going fast enough on its own or too fast, so you don't want to sweep? But if it's going slowly, you want to sweep to try and get it to the other side. Finally, if this isn't too confusing already, there's another team, and you actually alternate taking turns, and so it's kind of like shuffleboard or bocce ball, where you can actually, even let's say if I threw a rock down or slid a rock down the lane, and it was like right in the middle of the bullseye, and I was all excited, and that has happened to me once, the other team can actually slide a rock and knock it into my rock and knock my rock out of contention, and their rock will be in the bullseye. So, and then the teams, you go back and forth and up and down the lanes and go through, I think, oh goodness, all right, I wasn't paying attention. I think it's 6 turns in a game or something like that. But anyway, and then obviously whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins that point. So does that make any sense?
Yeah, you see, I learned about curling back in 2006. And the reason I learned about curling is, I admit it wasn't pure of motive, but I was watching the news as they were getting ready for the Winter Olympics, and a report came on about how the women's curling teams did a nude calendar for charity, and so I researched the subject, and then I intently watched the Olympic Games, because why wouldn't I? Curling became very important to me at that moment in time, and they apparently have continued, doing the calendar, which I have yet to purchase. But I appreciate their support of helping others and the tradition of calendar girls and the full Monty and everything else. So that's how I learned what curling was, following my true Scottish heritage.
Okay, well, and that's funny that you should mention the 2006 Olympics, because Bemidji, Minnesota, which is near the area that I'm from in northern Minnesota, so Bemidji has a Bemidji Curling Club, and apparently, according to those in the know, including Canadians, and Canadians are big in curling, so they would know, Bemidji has good ice. But not only does Bemidji have good ice, it also has good curlers, because we actually had, it was a local team from Bemidji that went to the 2006 Olympics and actually won the bronze medal in the men's curling, which is the first curling medal won by the U.S. So it was a local boy from Bemidji, Minnesota, who also owns one of my favorite pizza places in the whole world, Dave's Pizza, that won the bronze medal. So we have bronze medalists up in Bemidji, Minnesota, which is a small town, not the sort of town you would associate Olympic medalist with. So we both have a connection to the 2006 Olympics.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to the men's team at all, so that's was not interesting to me. But let's talk about, so why are we talking about curling?
Because I was actually back in Bemidji this past weekend at the Bemidji Curling Club doing a tournament with my cousins, and it's the first time I've ever curled, which is wrong given that I'm, practically 35 now, and I have never curled before. After all these years, I'm like, you can't be a northern Minnesota person and not curl. So my cousins invited me to play in a tournament this weekend, and I went up for it, and we had a blast. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun, so I had to share the fun with everyone.
Very nice. This makes, Bemidji sound a lot like the, classic movie Mystery Alaska about the hockey team up in Mystery Alaska.
That's right.
Which has wonderful legal issues with Burt Reynolds playing the judge and Russell Crowe as the sheriff and the team captain and everything else. So then there's a lawyer in that one. There's actually a couple courtroom scenes in that one. So
that's good.
It sounds very familiar. So they could totally do a film about curling.
They really could. You figure I'm a lawyer. I curled. I could work some more dramatic angles into the story probably if I thought about it. And yes, and we'd have to, obviously we have the Olympic medals. And the local pizza place. I think we could make a good movie out of this. I'm going to start working on the script.
You go and all that other motion practice and deposition prep that you have to do. So add screenwriter to your to-do list. So why are we've talked about curling, we've talked about your connection to curling. I saw the Facebook photos over the weekend of you curling, so bravo. But let's talk about the legal connection to curling.
The legal connection to curling is almost none. I'm probably the biggest legal connection to curling. I should do an informal poll and see if there are any other lawyers or judges who curl. No, I did a search for all published cases on curling, and I came across 3 mentions in total. One was actually a recent Wisconsin case about liability and whether the owner had an obligation to inform a curling club about the need to put up barriers. It was not an exciting case. There was another case where curling got a footnote mention because they were discussing shuffleboard, and they compared it to curling. So that was exciting. And then there was an older case, a 1924 customs case, that discussed apparently for some curling, and they did call it stones back in those days. I guess that's why I got stones in my head. Now in Bemidji they call them rocks. But in that case they were discussing the certain rocks that actually came from Scotland, and they were like below sea level, and it was this whole big deal, but they're really good for curling. So so they had to, of course, the judge had to describe curling, which he probably did a better job than I did, but it's always entertaining to see how they try to describe these things. And those were the only 3 cases I could find on curling at all. So this is really all just pretext. I just want to talk about my time curling, so that's why we're here.
Well, going back to the calendar, there has to be a custodian of records that maintained all the IDs, so that's probably a pretty good legal connection right there. There are some code sections that they have to comply with for publishing. So there you go.
There we go. I do have to say, too, it is a sport. People have mocked it and said it's not a sport. They have commented that you can drink and curl, and I do agree. I did not this weekend because I have a history of getting injured severely while playing organized sports, and so I figured once you add in slippery ice to the mix, alcohol was just going to guarantee an injury. So I did not imbibe. There were people who were imbibing, but I'm like, to be fair, I have played football and drank. I have had drinks during other sporting activities, so which may or may not, lead to me getting injured. But I would say that curling is a sport. I was very worn out after our 3 games, and I was a little bit sore the next day.
Oh, that's a lot to take in, to digest. I have no similar experiences to relate. In law school, I remember most of the rugby accidents that happened to people and injuries were at the party while they were drinking, not while they were playing the game. So, including a guy falling into a pool with two girls and needing stitches on his head because they hit the bottom and he hit head first. So
Ooh.
that was the rugby injury that involved the swimming pool. So
Ah. Yeah, not the usual way. He's lucky though. That's always the ones that scare me. Those swimming pool accidents.
yeah, that, and you think you have to drain the pool too because there's blood and all that good stuff. So that's not fun. So, but
No.
anyways, so that we've talked about curling. I do enjoy
There we go.
watching curling. I won't lie. It's a fascinating sport. I've helped with some corporate events where I've actually suggested let's go curling as the activity that we do, and have it.
Yeah.
We couldn't when we were looking in when we looked for those. We couldn't find any close to where the venue was for the conference we were attending, but I always thought curling would be something fun to go do with a bunch of people, just because it's so interesting. The teamwork, what you do, you're sweeping, the way the people throw the stones. I mean, like it's almost like a weird ballet twister move into rolled into one as they take the shot. So it's fascinating. So
There you go. A ringing endorsement.
it looks cool. So plus we got to buy the calendars to help whoever. So we didn't pay
Some
attention.
charity. It's not really important. It's a charity. That's what matters.